Video is part of a Do It With Me SPSS video series. In the first ANOVA video, we only looked at one dependent variable, extroversion, and found that, as expected, Gryffindor scored significantly higher compared to Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. To check the other personality traits, we can actually conduct multiple one-way ANOVAs in one go. To do this, click Analyze, Compare Means, one-way ANOVA, and then add all the dependent variables to your dependent list. Click OK. Then we go through the same steps as we did before. Let's start with the box plots. Looking for agreeableness, we can see that Hufflepuff scored the highest. Conscientiousness. So for conscientiousness, it is actually Ravenclaw who scored the highest, but we don't know if the difference is significant. For emotional stability, our expectations were wrong. We're done with extroversion, so let's move on to intellect. Ravenclaw scored highest for intellect. And then for the three dark triad traits, we can see that Slytherin scored highest for Machiavellianism, for narcissism, and for psychopathy, as we expect. Then we should go to the ANOVA table, which would look like this. So we want to see if significant differences exist for these personality traits. So everything seems to be significant except for emotional stability, meaning all groups do not have significant differences for emotional stability. So our test for emotional stability would end here. But for the others, we can check their homogeneity of their variances. And it is here. So we're going to check individually which of these variables are homogeneous or which of these variables are non-homogeneous. And the homogeneity would actually dictate what post hoc test we're going to look at. So we're done with extroversion. For Machiavellianism, it is not significant, therefore the variances are homogeneous, and therefore we would use Tukey tests. The same goes for narcissism, but not psychopathy and agreeableness. So for these two variables, we'll be looking at the Games-Howell post hoc test because the result is significant, meaning the variances are not homogeneous. But for the rest, for conscientiousness and intellect, we're not considering emotional stability because there is no significant difference anymore. So for conscientiousness and intellect, the result is non-significant, therefore the variances are homogeneous, and therefore we will be looking at the Tukey test. So let's check the multiple comparisons table. I have here the summary of the results, so we can see what we've identified as homogeneous and non-homogeneous. So looking at agreeableness first, since we've seen that the variances are non-homogeneous, we will be using the Games-Howell portion of the test, the post hoc test. So let's look at Hufflepuff if it is indeed higher than all of the other groups. So we can see that Hufflepuff mean minus Gryffindor mean is a positive value and it's significant, meaning that it is significantly higher than the Gryffindor agreeableness, significantly higher than the Ravenclaw agreeableness, and significantly higher than the Slytherin agreeableness. So our expectations were correct. Let's look at conscientiousness. We expected Hufflepuff to be the highest in conscientiousness. So looking at our results here, and again, what we found was the homogeneous variance. So we're going to be looking at the Tukey test. Tukey. So looking at this particular 3 rows, we can see that we have already non-significant values. So the Hufflepuff conscientiousness does not significantly differ from Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. It is only significantly different from Slytherin, and you can see that the difference is positive. So you would think that Hufflepuff conscientiousness is higher than that of Slytherin, but that's the only significant difference. That is why in our ANOVA test, we got a significant result. So even if you only have one pair that has a significant difference, your ANOVA test would result to a significant result. We will skip emotional stability because we've already found through the ANOVA test that there is no statistical difference. And we're done with the extroversion, so let's move on to intellect. Looking at Ravenclaw because that is what we expect to be the highest. And we are using, we have homogeneous variance, so we are using the 2 keys test. So for Ravenclaw, we see that Gryffindors and Ravenclaw do not actually have different means in terms of intellect, but Ravenclaws do score higher compared to Hufflepuff and Slytherin. So that's why our expectations were incorrect. For Machiavellianism, let's look at that. Okay, so it's homogeneous, therefore we're using 2 keys test. So we can see that for Slytherin, all results were significant. See? So Slytherins scored higher by 4.4 units compared to Gryffindor, as well as for Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw by these amount of units. Then checking narcissism. For narcissism, we're using Games Howell because we have identified the variance to be non-homogeneous. So looking at this 3 rows, we can see that just like Machiavellianism, all results were significant and Slytherins scored significantly higher than the 3 other Hogwarts house. And it's actually the same for psychopathy. So homogeneous, we're looking at the 2 keys test. Slytherin scored significantly higher than Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, and Ravenclaw in terms of psychopathy. So that's it. That's how you do ANOVA all in one go for all of these personality traits.